Welcome to Timeline Engine Podcast. Listen now.
You know that feeling, right? It's a Saturday morning. You're sitting there, maybe with a cup of coffee, just staring at a blank page. Or, standing in front of that messy garage you swore you'd organize. You're just waiting.
You're doing the summoning ritual.
Exactly. I'm waiting for the spark. That little internal green light that says, okay, let's go. I'm ready. I'm waiting to feel motivated. And until that feeling clicks, I'm just going to check my email one more time.
It's the universal procrastination maneuver, isn't it? We tell ourselves that the feeling of wanting to work is like a prerequisite for the work itself.
I do this constantly. I tell myself, I'm just not in the right headspace yet, or I need some inspiration before I tackle this. And it feels responsible, doesn't it? Like I'm respecting my own process.
It does.
But today, we are diving into something that takes that whole idea of waiting for inspiration and just completely dismantles it.
Dismantles is the right word, yeah. We are not looking at a typical self-help book today. This isn't, Atomic Habits or anything like that. We're looking at a text called The Fragility of Motivation, 4 Simulations of Dependency. And it's one of the starkest, most analytical things we've ever covered.
It felt less like a book and more like a dystopian forecast. Or maybe a diagnosis from a doctor with zero bedside manner.
Well, that's because the author frames the whole thing as a simulation. It's a set of projected futures. And it says right at the top, very clearly, no advice will be offered, no alternatives will be suggested, only outcomes.
Which is terrifying. I mean, usually you get here's the problem, now here's the fix. This is just, here's where you're going, good luck.
It's a bit like that, yeah. The premise is so simple, but it's devastating. We're observing a subject, and this subject holds one central belief. Motivation is the engine. When they feel it, they act. When they don't, they wait.
And here's the kicker. This is where it gets me. They don't see this waiting as laziness. They don't think they're slacking.
No, not at all. They call it alignment. They believe that forcing action when they don't feel like it is actually unhealthy or inauthentic.
Right. If I force it, the work will be bad, or I'll just burn out.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is walk through the 4 specific futures that this one belief creates. And I'll warn you, none of them end particularly well.
Okay, so let's get into future 1. The text calls this one the cycle.
Right. And future 1 is deceptive because it actually looks like success, at least at first glance.
Yeah.
If you were just watching this person from the outside, you might think they're doing great.
Yeah, these are those 10 p.m. bursts of energy where you decide you're going to reorganize your whole life and start a new business all before midnight.
That's it exactly. The source describes it as clear goals, strong intent, high ignition. The subject feels that surge. They buy the domain name, they clean off the desk, they write the first page. Action follows the feeling perfectly.
But motivation is a feeling, and feelings are, they're basically weather. They change.
And that is the core mechanism of failure here. Motivation is just a dopamine spike. It's biological. And as soon as that feeling fades, which it has to, the action just stops. Dead in its tracks.
So they get into this rhythm of start, pause, restart. But if they're restarting all the time, aren't they getting something done? Better to start and stop than to never start at all, right?
You'd think so. And that's the trap. The source points out something absolutely crucial here. It says, progress exists, but it never compounds. Think about compound interest. You need the money to stay in the account to grow. If you keep pulling everything out every few days, you're never going to get wealthy.
So they're doing work, but they're not building any equity in the work.
Exactly. They become what the text calls the perpetual beginner. Years pass in this simulation, 5 years, 10 years, and the subject is still at the starting line of a dozen different things. They're an expert at day 1, but they have no capacity for the messy middle.
That one hits a little too close to home. You look back and you've got 10 half-finished bridges that don't reach the other side. And a bridge that's halfway across a river is, 0% useful.
And because they never reach the other side, they never get the real reward of completion. They just get that little dopamine hit of starting over and over. It's an addiction to potential, not to results.
Okay, so that's the person who waits for the mood to strike them. But what about the person who tries to force the mood? That brings us to future 2, external dependence.
This is a very, very modern future. This is the internet age. In this timeline, the subject realizes their own internal drive is, flaky. So they decide to outsource it.
Outsourcing motivation. This is the YouTube motivational video loop, isn't it?
That's the one. The source says they rely on content, people, or pressure. They have to consume inspiration before they can act. They can't just go to the gym. They have to watch a video about a bodybuilder first. They can't just write. They have to listen to a podcast about writing to get hyped up.
Oh, I think we've all been there. You spend 2 hours watching videos about productivity, and by the end, you feel like you've been productive, but you haven't actually done a thing.
You've stimulated the brain. You've got a contact high from someone else's work. But the simulation points out a really dark consequence. When you outsource your drive, your output becomes completely dependent on conditions you can't control.
Right, so if the internet is down, or if your favorite guru stops posting, you just stall.
You become a machine that only runs when someone else pushes the button. And here is where the text corrects a huge misconception. The subject in this future, they often complain about burnout.
They say, I'm just so burnt out, I can't find the energy.
But the text says that's not what's happening. It says it is actually dependency. It's not burnout. Burnout comes from doing too much. This comes from needing a constant external hit to do anything at all.
Whoa.
It's the opposite of burnout. It's
Well,
withdrawal.
That's a massive reframing. You're not tired from the work, you're in withdrawal from the hype.
Precisely. You've trained your brain to need this frantic high-energy state just to do normal things. So if it's quiet, if it's boring, if it's just you and the task, you freeze. You're like a sailboat that can only move in a hurricane.
Which leads us perfectly into Future 3, because eventually, life stops being about hype. This one is called the motivation gap.
Yeah, this is where the simulation really raises the stakes. In the first two futures, the consequences are mostly personal stagnation. In Future 3, the consequences become tangible loss.
The scenario here is that life just gets harder. You have kids, or a mortgage, or a job with real pressure. You can't just wait for the vibe anymore.
And the source puts it so bluntly. Motivation does not scale. The amount of natural emotional drive you have is finite, but the demands of a complex adult life, they can be infinite.
So there's a mismatch.
A huge gap. A gap between what you feel like doing, which is probably sleeping, and what you must do.
And for the person who relies on motivation, that gap must feel physically heavy.
That's the exact word the source uses. Heaviness. Without a system, without discipline, every single task feels incredibly burdensome because they're trying to fuel it all with emotion, not with habit.
And how do they interpret that heaviness? Because I know when I feel that kind of resistance, I take it as a sign that something's wrong.
They interpret it as a signal to stop. They think, this shouldn't be this hard. If it feels this hard, maybe I'm in the wrong career. Maybe I'm depressed. Maybe I've lost my passion.
They think they've lost their drive.
Correct. But the simulation offers a really brutal analysis here. It says, they did not lose their drive. They never built anything beneath it.
Oof, they never built anything beneath it. That's that floor versus ceiling idea.
Exactly. Motivation is a ceiling. It's the high point. It's great when you're up there, but you need a floor. A baseline of systems, of discipline that carries you when the emotion is gone. This subject has no floor. So when the ceiling inevitably drops, they just get crushed.
That's so tragic because they think the problem is emotional. They think they need to go find their passion again. But the problem is purely structural.
And while they're off searching for that lost feeling, opportunities are closing, careers stall, because the currency of adulthood is consistency, and they're bankrupt.
Okay, this is getting grim. We've got the starter, the junkie, and now the adult who gets crushed. But there's one more timeline. Future 4, the late realization.
This is the final simulation, and the subject is older now, and they start doing something different. They finally stop looking in the mirror and they start looking out the window.
And they notice that their friends, their colleagues, they aren't always hyped up.
They observe something that seems to them impossible. They see people moving without motivation. They see people working when they're tired, working when they're bored, working without any immediate emotional reward.
It's like seeing a magic trick. Wait, you're doing the report even though you don't feel like it? How?
And this leads to the big epiphany. I think this is the core of the entire text. The subject realizes motivation was never the cause of progress. It was a side effect of momentum.
Say that again? That's a whole thing right there.
Motivation is a side effect of momentum, not the cause.
So we have the order completely backward.
Completely. The subject spent their entire life thinking, first comes the feeling, then comes the action. I feel good, so I work. But the reality they finally see in successful people is the opposite. First comes the action, and then the feeling might follow.
It's like a cold car engine. You have to turn the key and force it to turn over before it starts to warm up and run smoothly.
That's a perfect analogy. The warmth comes after the movement. This person spent their whole life freezing in the driver's seat, waiting for the heater to turn on before they'd even turn the key.
And the tragedy of Future 4 isn't that they don't figure it out, it's that the realization arrives, and I'm quoting here, after time has already been spent.
It is a future of pure regret. You look back at decades of waiting for the right mood and realize you could have just done the work anyway.
You realize the mood was a luxury. It was never a requirement.
Exactly. You could have built the business, written the book, all while feeling tired or bored or totally uninspired. The work would have counted just the same.
That is a haunting thought, that a bridge built by a bored engineer holds up just as well as one built by an excited one.
The concrete doesn't care about your feelings. But the subject of our simulation made their feelings the gatekeeper to everything.
So we've walked through the 4 futures, the cycle, the dependency, the gap, and the late realization. When you pull it all together, what's the synthesis? What's the common thread?
Well, the conclusion the source draws is, it's fascinatingly objective. It basically says that across all 4 timelines, motivation came and went. That was the one constant. It fluctuated.
So motivation was just being motivation.
Right. The text says motivation did not fail the subject. It was simply unreliable, and the subject built everything on it.
It's like blaming the rain for getting you wet when you chose to live in a house with no roof. The rain is just doing what rain does.
Exactly. The failure wasn't a lack of passion or talent. It was a structural flaw. You cannot build a consistent life on top of an inconsistent resource.
You know, despite how brutal this all sounds, I actually find it incredibly liberating.
How so?
Well, if I don't need to feel motivated to do good work, then I'm off the hook. I don't have to spend all this energy trying to get in the zone. I can just do the thing. The feeling, or lack of feeling, is irrelevant.
It's the ultimate decoupling, isn't it? It separates your performance from your mood. It means you can have a bad day, a low-energy day, and still move the needle forward. You become, in a way, immune to the weather of your own mind.
Immune to the weather of your own mind. I love that. It takes all the pressure off. You don't have to force yourself to be excited about a spreadsheet. You just have to do the spreadsheet.
And ironically, as that final future hinted, once you start doing the spreadsheet, you might find the motivation shows up after all. But it joins you on the journey. It doesn't buy the ticket for you.
It's a passenger, not the driver.
A flaky passenger who sometimes sleeps through the whole trip. And that's fine, you're still driving.
So, just like the source said, we're not here to give advice, we're just reporting on the simulation. But the implication is pretty clear. If you're sitting there waiting for the lightning bolt, you should probably stop looking at the sky.
The simulation suggests that if you are waiting, you are already in the trap. You're in future 1, 2, or 3. The only way out is to reverse the order of operations. Action first, feelings second.
It's a really sobering look at what happens when we let our feelings run the show. We think of listening to our body as this, undeniably good thing. But this source suggests it can be a path to nowhere.
It suggests that listening to your body when your body just wants to procrastinate is a really fancy form of self-sabotage.
So here's the final takeaway. Relying on the feeling of wanting to work seems to be a guaranteed path to one of these 4 broken futures. There isn't a single version of this simulation where waiting works out in the long run. Not one.
It's a 0% success rate strategy.
I want to leave you with a thought then. Something to mull over, and this comes straight from the logic we've just explored.
That's a challenge.
If you stopped waiting for the feeling of motivation today, right now, and instead trusted that the feeling would only show up after you started moving, what project would you kick up right this second?
And are you willing to do it even if that feeling never shows up?
Think about that, and then maybe just start. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more AI and psychology insight.